Hakadosh, Boker Or, Masechet Zevachim, Daf Yomi, Daf Pechet, Amud Aleph 8881. Says the Mishnah. We're starting on the Mishnah, a few lines down. It's going to be 2, 4, 6, 7 lines down. Ko kele alach mekachin et alach. Any utensil which is designated for liquids, they are going to sanctify liquids. Umidot yavesh, and the midot yavesh are going to be mekachot et yavesh. En kli alach mekadesh et yavesh. It's not going to be that the kli alach is going to come and sanctify the yavesh. V'lo yavesh mekadesh et alach, and not the yavesh is going to be mekadesh et alach. Yeah, so he says kli hakodesh shenikvu. Whenever we're talking about now kli hakodesh, which they made right holes. Im osin bahen me'em lachtan shehayu osin vehen shlemin mekachin. So kli hakodesh, that you have any type of a hole. If it's right now that you're still able to do me'en melachtan, which means you could still do like the melacha that you used to do before it got the hole, right? Vehen shlemin, and it's still going to be shalem mekachin. V'im lav, and if not, em mekachin, it is not sanctified anymore because it loses its status quo. V'kulan en mekachin ela b'kodesh. But all of them will only make it holy when it's in the azara. If it's going to be outside of the azara, it does not make anything holy. Okay? Fine. Gemara. The Gemara says, okay, Amar Shmuel. Shmuel says, Lo shanu ela b'midot. We're talking about kli medidot of lach, which means utensils which are used for measuring, right? Like measuring cups and measuring things like that. Avala mizrakot, right? But if we're talking about the mizrakot, which are basically for the nozlim, so mekachin, they are going to be mekadesh also the yavesh. Meaning, if it's going, why is it called midot? Because it's measuring, right? By the way, you should know, Rav Desso says the same thing as with midot. Why do we call them amidah of kaas, amidah of ga'ava, amidah? Why are they called midot? Because the reason why is because we have to measure how much are we supposed to use of them. That's what it is. Because you have to measure it, meaning you have to measure. What are you supposed? How much amidah is a measurement. So the reason why they're called the midat akas, the midah of gava, the midah of this. Why is it called the midah? It's called the midah because you have to measure how much are you supposed to use. You understand? That's why it's called midot, right? The good midot and bad midot. Technically speaking, there's no such thing as good midot and bad midot. All the midot are good. The only thing is you have to measure. You have to measure how much are you supposed to use of it or not. That's what's called. That's why it's called midot. So here it says, right? So here, yeah. So he comes down and he says like this, right? So here he says, "Lo shanu ela midot." We're talking about now the midot. What do you mean now the midot? Are you guys listening? What? Yeah, he comes and he says like this. He says, we're talking about the midot, right? We're talking about now. We're talking about right now, right? The midot that they're measuring cups. So therefore, these measuring cups or whatever it is that they measure liquids, that's what we're talking about, right? The halacha of the Mishnah. However, when we're talking about mizrakot, which is basically it's going to be not for measuring, but it's for liquids, right? So it's like a pot or whatever it is, but it's not for liquids. So therefore, he says these are mekachin. They will always be mekachin, even the yavesh, even something which is dry, right? 1 minute. 1 minute. What's Boklum? Yeah, Shneimar, but it says in the pasuk, Shnehem melim solet. What does that mean? One more time. We have meat and we have liquids. What are the liquids? Oil, right? You have wine, right? You have water. Those are liquids, right? Which one? Blood also. Yeah. So you've got liquids and then you have solids. So we just mentioned in our Mishnah that whatever is going to be kli lach is mekadesh et lach, but it's not going to be mekadesh the yavesh. And kli yavesh is going to be mekadesh the yavesh. Now each one for their designation. So he comes and he says, however, though, that's only going to be by midot. What are midot? Utensils which are used like measuring cups. However, though, if it's going to be utensils which are stam for liquids, they are also mekadesh et yavesh. So Amar le Ravacha medifti le Ravina, says Ravacha medifti to Ravina, mincha lachahi, right? He comes and he says, 1 second, the mincha, right? Is that considered already lach? Of course it should be. Why? It's pululav hashemen. Meaning, if you have a flour offering, you're going to tell me flour is yavesh. But technically speaking, he says, but it's mixed with oil. So if it's going to be mixed with oil, so therefore, right? So you see from here, the kli alach is mekadesh even the yavesh. So Amarle, he comes and he says, right? He says, lo nitzecha, what are we dealing with? Ella lel yavesh sheba. We're talking about the yavesh of the mincha, not the part which is going to be mixed with oil. Even the yavesh, it's also going to be mikadesh because of this keli. Ibaitema, if you want, you can answer. Mincha, to do with the korban mincha, right? Even though it's lach, legabe dam kevesh dami, but to do with dam, it's yavesh. Meaning, there's actually a machlok in the poskim, by the way, is a powder, right, or something like flour, basically. Is that considered a lach or yavesh? Is that considered moist, like a liquid, or is that considered a solid? So no, so that part which is mixed with oil, yes. But we're talking about what about the parts which are not mixed with oil and it's still dry? So he comes and he says, even though it's considered a lach, but when I compare that to blood, it's considered a yavesh, right? Because obviously it depends what you're comparing it to, right? Because obviously if I'm comparing it to liquid, which is blood, yeah, the consistency. So therefore it's considered dry. Okay. So Amar Shmuel says, Kli sharet en mekachin ela shlemin. Whenever we're talking about now Kli sharet, the Kli sharet is only going to be mekadesh when the Kli sharet is shalem, when it's going to be whole, right? And not when it's got a hole. Okay? Whole, sorry, mind the pun. Whole and whole with WHOLE or whole HOLE, right? The nekif, right? The chor. Okay? So now he comes and he says like this. So he says, okay, the amrilan, some people say, right? That it's not going to be mekadesh, the klisharet, only when they're going to be shalem and maleh umibifnim, and from the inside. So he says, my benayu, what's the difference between them now? So he says, ika benayu berutze midot, right? Berutze midot, right? He comes and he says, right? The Evdel Benehen is going to be to do with the Godesha Odef on the top part. Okay, so according to the first, right? According to the first mandamar that we just mentioned right now, the kli is mekadesh only what's inside the actual keli. According to the second gisa, it's going to be mekadesh everything, right? Even the things which are above, which means like this. I've got a pot. Sometimes it happens that it overflows. Which one?
זום אין לגבי המידה, כי הוא אומר לך כמה ביחס. על זה אתה מדבר. זה הטופי כאילו עכשיו.
No, we're talking about the kli sharet. 1 minute.
כן, אבל על המידה...
1 minute. Yeah, I've got a kli sharet. So now, I've got inside. Now, if we're talking about a liquid, right, you have to remember the liquids, right, if it's too much liquid, what happens? It overflows, right? Which liquid will still stay inside?
קרוש, דם קרוש. עם השמן. עם השמן. זה עם השמן הרב.
Wine. Wine is the only liquid which makes a dome. Yeah, wine is only liquid which makes a dome, right? Okay, but wine is only liquid which will make a dome. Okay, but right, obviously you're putting too much. But I'm saying, but when you come and you have right, and you go like this, you will see that there's actually a dome. That's wine. Okay, so now what happens is as follows, right? With a solid, you've got the food inside, but sometimes you can make a mount. What is a mount? A mount which is going over above the top. So he comes and he says, what is the nafkamina between them? He comes and he says, berutze midot. What does that mean? Did you realize the first one we said, en mekachin ela mitochan, ve'amla en mekachin ela shlemim umleim umibifnim. Now, what was the difference between the two? What was the two different girsaot? One of them is saying that it has to be shalem. We mentioned shalem. It has to be, right, mileim, right? And then the other one says, right, mibifnim. Mibifnim just means inside the azara. The other one said, emekachila mitochan, from inside of it. So he says, you know what the difference between them? The extra which is on the top. When you went over the top, you've got here the utensil, the little bit that's on here.
The tension, physical load, the tension of the water.
Okay, but we're not talking about liquids anymore. We're talking about a solid. Okay, it's solid. So we're talking about right here, this solid which is above, that's enough kamina between them. That's berutze midot. Which one? That's a machloket between the two different girsaot. One girsa yes, one girsa no. He said mitochan. If it says mitochan, it's dafka what's inside. Amar Shmuel ve'amrila. Yeah, so he says b'matnita tana. In the matnita and the braita we learned en mekachin ela shlemim umleim umitochan ubifnim. Has to be inside, but it says both things. Umitochan ubifnim. Right, bifnim was within the azara, right, and tochan is going to be when it's going to be from inside. So Amar Avasi Amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Avasi the name Rabbi Yochanan, Lo shanu ela she'en dato leosif. What are we talking about exactly? The Chachamim are only talking about in a case where you do not want to add anything on the keli. Aval dato leosif, but if you do want to add on the keli, rishon kodesh. What does that mean exactly? All the kamuyot that you're going to put inside already became kodesh, one after another. Tanya Miyachi, we also learned this in a Braita. Mele'im, when it says mele'im solet, en mele'im ela shlemim. Whenever it says mele'im, it means that it's shalem. Okay, so he says, Sa'amar Rabbi Yosef, says Rabbi Yosef, Ematai, when do we say these words that it's going to be mekadesh less than the shiur? Bizman shen dato leosif, if you don't want to add anything onto it. Aval dato leosif, but if you do want to add anything onto it, Rishon Kodesh, everything that you put inside already became holy, bezu, achar, zu.
שפה
Okay.
פחות משיעור, הוא מתכוון למה? לדוגמה.
Says the Gemara on the bottom of, right, towards the bottom of Pechet Amud Aleph. Okay, there's the two dots. En kli alach mekadesh et hayavesh. We learned that a kli lach, which is designated for liquids, is not mekadesh the yavesh. Okay, and the yavesh, not the lach. So Amar Rav says, Vitem Ravasi, and somebody says Ravasi, en mekachin li karev. Right, we're not going to be mekadesh otam to bring them to the mizbeach. Aval mekachin otam li pasel. But we are going to be mekadesh otam to become pasul. Right, what does that mean? You remember we said that if it's already inside of it and it becomes holy, so then it's going to be purified, just like we said that the Mizbeach is purifying the Korban. Once it's inside the Kli Sharet, it's going to be Mekadesh Oto. So he comes and he says, En Mekachim Likarev. They do not become Mekadesh Otam to be Mekarev Otam, but rather only just to make it Pasul. So he comes and he says, Ikad Matin Laha. Some people, they taught it on this. What is it brought down? It says like this. En Mevi'in, what? No. Meaning that the halacha is only with regards to pasul, not to do with to bring it to the mizbeach. So he says like this. Ikad matin halacha. It says like this. En mevi'in menachot unsachim uminchat behema ubikurim mina meduma. So you're not allowed to bring menachot. What are menachot? Flour offerings. Nesachim, wine offerings, wine libations. Uminchat behema, or a minchat nesachim, which is coming with the behema. Okay, so he says ubikurim or bikurim, which is the first produce. Mina meduma. From meduma. What is meduma? When you have a tarovet of truma and chulin. When you have a mixture of truma and chulin, you don't bring from there. We don't even bichlal have to talk about whether it's orla or kilei kerem. Now, what happens right now if vimevi, if you did bring from these things, right, and it's already in the kli sharet, so lo kidesh, it does not become holy. So Amar Rav says, Vitem Ravasi, lo kidesh. What does it mean again? It doesn't become holy. Lo kidesh li karev. It's not going to be brought on the mizbeach. But kidesh li pasel, but it is going to become kodesh to do with the psul. Okay, and that's what we mentioned also above, which means that again, that if it's going to be that afterwards it went out to the Azara or to Yom or Mechusar Kippurim or whatever, they do become pasul. Okay, so that means it becomes it's only as halachot to go down but not to go up. Okay, that's what we're saying. That's li pasel velo li kadesh. Li kadesh means that you're purifying it, and therefore right now you can bring it up to the mizbeach. So he says, no, we're not saying that. You could not be. Meaning, if I came and I took miduma. So I took Truma and Chulin, and I come and I brought Bikurim from that, or I came and I brought down a Minchat Be'ema, or I brought whatever it is, I cannot bring it to the Mizbeach. Why? Because Lo Kidesh Likarev. It was not sanctified, it was not purified for Likarev. Mazel Likarev, right? Likarev is to come and to bring it closer to the Mizbeach. But Lipasel, yes.
How come it can be Kodesh or Pasul?
No, it's not kodesh for pasul. The second that you put it inside the kli sharet, what happens is now it could still become pasul. If a tvul yom, somebody that comes and he touches it, so it becomes tameh. So therefore, I'm going to say that it's holy, right? It works to make it pasul, but it does not work to bring it to the mizbeach. There's two separate things. There's likarev, that we already said that it's making it holy. Which one?
That if we touch inside the keli or not inside the keli, it will be pasul.
Yeah.
What's the
One more time?
כן, אתה לא יכול להבין.
the keli?
Yeah, you cannot use it to the mikdash. That's it.
The kli sharet, what's happening now is that I would have had a havamina that the kli sharet is just like the mizbeach, which right now is likarev. What does it mean likarev? Even though it's pasul, I could still bring it to the mizbeach, correct? I just said now, no. I said, right? I said kol hakarev, right? Anything that when we just said it's mekadesh, it's only likarev. It's not likarev, which means that I still could not bring it to the mizbeach. But I would have thought, say, listen, but it's already in the kli. It's already in the kli. It's like it's already on the mizbeach. Bring it up, use it. No, we said no. But to do with the psul, I'm not going to say that no, it doesn't become pasul. It does become pasul. So that's what we said, that the kli sharet helps only lipasel, but not likarev. Okay, so Tana Rabbanan, now we learned in a Braita. Kli Kodesh shenikvu. When you have a Kli Kodesh that has a hole, en matichinotan, right? You're not going to come and you're not going to fix the hole, right? In the olden days, what they would do is nowadays, right? You would just come and you throw it out. In the olden days, they would come and they would mold it out over, and therefore they would fix the hole by blending it in and fixing the hole. So en matichinotan, ve'en matichin letochan avar, or also you're not allowed to put the plum, right, which is basically the lead, in order to come and to fix it. Shenifgemu, but if it was only pgam, emetakninotan. Sagin shenifgam, right, when we're talking about now, if you have a knife which is pagum, en mashchizin pgimata, you can't come and just sharpen it, and now I just got rid of the pgam. Nishmeta, let's say if it comes out of the handle, right? Many times it happens, right? It comes out of the handle, and machzirinota, you don't bring it back. Abba Shaul Omer, Abba Shaul says, sakin matrefet, right? The sakin many times could actually cause trefot. Ba'ita b'mikdash, it was in the mikdash, v'nimnu alea kohanim v'ganzua, so they went and they put it in geniza. Why? Because if it's always going to cause trefot, so therefore obviously you're just going to come and you're going to put it in geniza. Okay? Tanu Rabbanan. So we learned now in a Braita. Bigde keuna en osim ota maaseh machat. So bigde keuna, you're not going to make it maaseh machat, which means through tfidah, through sewing. Ela maaseh oreg, but weaving. Shneimar maaseh oreg, which means that we're not going to come, and when we say that you're not going to be oreg the yiriyot to make clothing or whatever it has to be that you're doing it in this fashion, right? He says nit ga'alu, if it gets dirty, en mechabsin, you're not allowed to wash it. Lo beneter velo ba'ahal. Right? Not in neter or al. These are different types of forms of soaps. Okay? They're chomre kibus. Okay? So he says, ha b'may mechabsim, but you can wash it with water. So Amar Abaye comes and he says, hachi kamer. This is what it means to say. Hu ge'u b'may. If right now it comes into, right, it becomes dirty, and therefore you have to wash it, mechabsin otah, that they could wash it even with neter v'al, which means you could wash it even with the soaps, right, and other things as well. Okay? But if it already got to such a situation, right? Then even with water, you can't wash it. Everyone understood what I just said or not? One more time. What we just said was, if it's clean, right? So therefore, and all I need technically is water. So therefore, to come to wash it, right? All I could even use the soap. But if it got already so dirty that I would need the soap, now I can't use the soap. Right? I can't even use water. Right? That's what he says. Right? That's what he says. The writer. He says, Asur lechabsam. I said chomre kibus. I said it 3 times. That's Rashi. Rashi says it. Tisakel v'33. Yeah, he says, Tanura, right? We said, right, that the you're not allowed to come and you're not allowed to use them at all. Right? You're not allowed to wash them at all. Right? Because basically what he's trying to say is that if it's going to be, right, here he wants to say the reason is enan yut bimkom ashirut, which means when you have a beged which was mitlachlech lichluch rav, that's derech aniyut to come and to wash it and to fix it. So therefore you just throw it out. So because of that, you can't even wash it with the water or whatever it is. You understand? So then there's no nafkamina. But he says, but if it's just going to come stam a little bit, whatever it is, so then you could even use the soaps and all those things. There's no problem. And some people say, en mechabsim otam kolikar, which means even if you can come and wash them, you don't do it. Why? We don't want aniyut bimkom ashirut. Meaning, the Bet HaMikdash was supposed to be something of hierarchy. It was something of kings. It was something. So we don't want that. People are running around and they've got. How do you call this? Like old or stained or they don't want that. They want that.
The ashes they get dirty.
Yeah, they get dirty with many things, with the blood, with the ashes, with many things. But they want that it should be in a certain fashion, that it should be like of hierarchy, that it's not going to be something else. Okay, so Tana Rabbana, we learned in a Braita. Ha'me'il. The me'il is kulo shel tchelet. The me'il of the Kohen Gadol was completely made out of tchelet. Okay? Shneimar b'zeh pasuk v'yasim me'il ha'efod kelil tchelet. Shulav, right, which are the shulaim. How do you say the shulaim? The fold, I don't know how you say it in English. It's okay, shulav, right? Tell me if you find it there, doctor. Yeah, the michbelet, the fold. I don't know. Yes, yeah. Okay. So the shulav, keitzad, how would they make the shulaim, right? Mevi tchelet v'argaman v'tolat shani shizurim. So you're going to bring strings made out of tchelet and argaman and tolat shani. Okay, and you put them together. Ve'oseh ota kemin, right, rimonim, right, and you're going to make it in the tzura of rimonim. Shelo pitchu pihen, right, that they never opened up their mouths. Uchmin konaot shel knasot shebrashet tinokot, which is basically like kafturim that they used to come. The hems, that's what the hem, the hem. The hem is the bottom of the thing, the fold. Yeah, that's in English. Okay. So he comes and he says, yeah, he comes and he says, right, the kaftorim and everything which they used to put on the kovaim of the yiladim. Umevi shivim u'shnaim zagin. They're going to bring 72 zagin, right? These are the defanot of the pa'amonim. Shebein shivim u'shnaim imbelin. That you have the 72 imbals, right? You remember the imbal, right? We're talking about right, the inside of the bells, right? V'tole bahen, and you're going to put it on the bottom. So therefore, inside the rimonim, you have the pa'amonim with the imbalim. 36 b'tzad zeh, u36 b'tzad mitzad zeh. So you have 36 on one side and 36 on the other side. Rabbi Dosa omer b'shem mishum Rabbi Yehuda. Says Rabbi Dosa in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, 36 hayu, right? There was only 36. 18 mitzad zeh, 18 mitzad zeh. Meaning like this. Do you have a total of 72? Right? Do you have a total of 72 or do you have a total of 36? If you say it's going to be 72, so it's 36 and 36, 36 on one side, 36 on the other side. If you're going to tell me it's going to be 36 in total, so it's going to be 18 and 18. Okay? So now he says, yeah, Amar Rabbi Inyani bar Sason, says Rabbi Inyani bar Sason, ki machloket kan, kach machloket b'manon negaim. The exact same machloket between Tanakama and Rabbi Dosa to do with how many of the pa'amonim are there, v'chule v'chule, is the exact same machloket to do with the mispar marot of nigei atzarat. The Tanam, as we learned in the Mishnah, marot negaim, how many marot negaim? Rabbi Dosa ben Kinas omer 36, so it's going to be 36, and Akavya ben Ma'alel omer 72. So the exact same machloket, right, that we do find to do with the concept of how many bells are there in the beged of the Kohen Gadol is going to be the same machloket to do with how many different types of marot negaim are there. Says Rabbi Inyani bar Sason, Lama nismecha parashat korbanot parashat bigdei keuna. Why is it that you have the korbanot right beside the bigdei keuna? Because basically you have parashat Tzav is all the korbanot and everything, right? And then immediately afterwards it comes and tells you to do with the bigdei keuna. Why? So he comes and he says, Lomar lecha, to tell you, ma korbanot mechaprim, just like the korbanot are mechaper, so to the bigdei keuna mechaprim. So to the beged of keuna is also going to be mechaprim alenu. Yes. So he says akutonet. Right? We read this on Kippur, by the way. In Seder Avodah, we read this. If you remember, we say that this is the begadim. So he says akutonet is mechaperet al shfichut damim. The kutonet is going to be mechaper on shfichut dam. Shneimar vayishchatu sirizim vayitbilu akutonet badam. So therefore, since this pasuk we're telling you about that the brothers of Yosef came and they dipped it, right? They dipped it in the blood, right? It's in Yana Dioma. This is this Shabbat. Yeah, we're going to read it. So he comes and he says, so therefore what happens is that the fact that you dipped the coat in blood, so therefore it's going to also come, La'atil lavo, it's going to be mechaper, the tonet of the Kohanim, al chet shel shvichut damim. Okay? So here, by the way, Tosafot actually says it's not going to be mechaper on the Rotzeach himself. It's on the tzibur sharotzeach gadal betocho, because they're arevim to him. So again, meaning a person shouldn't think that you know what? 1 second, he just murdered, but don't worry about it. The Kohen Gadol's clothing is going to be okay. No, exactly. The Kohen Gadol's clothing is going to help the tzibur that the Rotzeach was gadal betocho. No. One more time. You have a Rotzeach that was in a certain community. He grew up in a certain community. When he becomes a murderer, that community technically is punished. They're arevim to him. Why? Maybe if they would have had a bigger effect on him, maybe they wouldn't have become a murderer. So therefore, what happens is that the clothing of the Kohen Gadol are going to be mechaper, says the Tosafot, on the community, not on the murderer. The murderer, no, he's not going to get forgiven, but it's on the community. Michlasayim, right? When we're talking about now the michlasayim, which are the pants, mechaprim al gilui arayot. They are going to be mechaper on gilui arayot. Shneimar v'aselay michnesebad lechasot b'sar adva. But it says that you have to make the michnesebad, it's like a shorts or whatever it is, in order to cover b'sar adva. So therefore, obviously, what's happening is that's going to be mechaper on, right, on on the what? On the erva. So here again, Rashi comes and he says in Erechin the exact same thing. It's on arevut tzibur, not on the chotim. Meaning a person shouldn't think, don't worry about it. Now, why? Because they could do whatever they want. Because don't worry, there's clothing of the Kohen Gadol. No, no, no. The clothing of the Kohen Gadol is going to be mechaper on the community where this guy came out and this guy's doing all this gilui erva. Mitznefet, the hat, is going to be mechaperet al gasei aruach. You remember we spoke about this many times because the hat is on the highest part of the head, so therefore it's going to be on the haughtiness, which is on the highest part. So yeah, but we're not on the zupanim yet. We're on. 1 minute, 1 minute. That's the last one, doctor. 1 minute. Shuai. No. This is gava. Gasei aruach. Gava. No, for sure not. Gava is haughtiness. Azupanim is chutzpah. There's a huge difference between haughtiness and chutzpah. What? So says the Gemara, when it says mitznefet, it's going to be mechaperet al gasei aruach. Minayin, how do we know? Amar Rabbi Chanina, yavo davar shebegova. It's going to come something which is on the top of the head. V'yichaper al gova, and it's going to be mechaper on gova, which is gasut aruach. Okay, the avnet, right? The avnet is mechaper al hirhur alev. So the avnet is the breastplate. So that's going to be mechaper on. Yes, that's going to be mechaper on the. No, the choshen is the breastplate. This is the avnet. So he says the avnet is the belt. The belt, right? The belt is going to be mechaper al hirur alev, right? So he comes and he says, okay. No, not the meruba. The meruba is the choshen. That's the next part. The avnet is the belt. Yes. So he says, yes. So he says. So the avnet is hirhur alev. So he says this is hirhur avodah zarah, right? 1 second, guys. 1 second. 1 second. Yes. No Chabad, the Hasidim. Yeah. 1 second. So he comes and he says the choshen is mechaper on dinin, right? So he comes and he says like this: the choshen is a breastplate. So the choshen with the stones, that's going to be mechaper on dinin. Why? Because that's how you do justice. That's how you do it. Shneimar v'asita choshen mishpat. Ephod is going to be mechaper on the avodah kochavim. Shneimar en ephod u'trafim. The trafim, so that's the ephod. Hameil, right, which is the robe, is going to be mechaper on lashon hara. Minayin, Amar B'chani yavod davar shebekol yechaper al kol hara. What does that mean? When the me'il, it makes the noise. So just like, when the bells, it starts making the noise. So therefore, because of that, it's going to be mechaper on the kol, which is the kol of lashon hara. The tzitz, right? Yeah. So he says the tzitz is going to be mechaper on lazupanim, right? Why? Because the tzitz, it says v'yal metzach aron. When you come and you want to show about the metzach is obviously, so therefore he says ba'azut panim kativ umetzach isha zona hayalecha. What does that mean? Basically, the zona, she's got an audacity. For her to do such an action, she has to have chutzpah. She has to have azut padim. So azut metzach. So therefore, it comes azut is azut metzach. It comes from the forehead, from the front. So says the Gemara, are you going to tell me that they're mikaprim avonot of shvichut damim lashon hara and everything just by the kohanim coming wearing the clothing? We found 2 things that there's no kapara in the korbanot. So he says, but we did find it. What are these 2 things? Shvichut damim and lashon hara. Shvichut damim, where do we learn? We learn from Egel Arufa. Lashon hara, from the ketoret. So the ketoret is a kapara for lashon hara. Titani Reb Chananya, but taught Reb Chananya, minayin leketoret she mechaperet. How do we know the ketoret is going to be mechaperet? Shneimar v'yiten et ketoret v'chaper la'am. He put the ketoret and it was a kapara for the nation. This is talking about when they came and they wanted to stop the Magifa, if you remember. So when they wanted to stop the Magifa, they put the Ketoret. V'tanim v'Ishmael, al ma Ketoret mechaperet, al lashon hara. It's going to be on lashon hara. Yavor davar shebechashai v'yichaper maaseh b'chashai. Why? The Ketoret is done hash-hash. Just like he says, it's going to be mechaper on the Avira, which is done hash-hash. So therefore he comes and he says, how are you going to tell me now the big dick Kehuna are going to be mechaprim on these things? Right? So kasha lashon hara, you just told me that shvichut damim is going to be kapara with what? With a kutonet. You just told me the lashon hara is going to be mechaper what? With a me'il. And I just told you now that the shvichut damim is going to be atoned through the egla rufa, and the how do you call this? Lashon hara is going to be with the ketoret. So what's going on? So says the Gemara, la kasha, that's not a question. Had yedia man katle What does that mean? To do a shfichut damim, it all depends whether you know who killed him or not. If you know, right, he says, if right now you do not know, so therefore you need the agla rufa. If you know, you have the ketoret. Says one, if you know who killed him, obviously you don't bring the agla rufa. But then you kill him. So what do you need now? Big dekuna. Big dick, what's going on? What's the case? If you know who killed him, right? You kill the guy. So answers the Gemara. Bemezid. One second. So he says bemezid velo atruben. No, it was bemezid, but there was no hatra. Remember, when there was no hatra, you cannot kill him. So therefore, if right now, right, you cannot kill him, so then that's it. There's nothing what to do. So here we're talking about that it was going to be bemezid, and therefore there was no hatra'ah. Okay, so therefore, obviously, we need the bigdei keuna. Okay, next, lashon hara, also nami lokasha. It's not a question. Why? Habetzinah, habefarhesia. One of them we're talking about that it was done betzinah, and the other one we're talking about befarhesia. So when it says the me'il is mechaper, it's talking about the me'il is mechaper on something which was done befarhesia. But if it's going to be betzinah, so then you have the ketoret. Because again, ketoret is bechashai, so lashon hara bechashai. But if the lashon hara was done befarhesia, so then you need the me'il which was done befarhesia. Dran alach hamizbeach mekadesh.